again, I think this has been a really great day, and I certainly enjoyed the session with our colleagues from other associations to understand better what they're doing to help advance manufacturing and what some of the challenges that we're facing might be and how we might start to mitigate those challenges. Over the break, I've asked folks to tell me what we haven't discussed or what we haven't discussed thoroughly enough that we should talk about in this session. And um, the one thing here is what can we do to drive further adoption of advanced manufacturing solutions? And I think we've talked a lot around that topic, but I'd like to hear from all of you on real concrete things that NEMA or other associations like NEMA can do to drive that adoption. So feel free to unmute yourself and jump in or raise your hands or add your point in the chat. And if you don't start talking, I'm going to start just calling randomly on folks. All right, Bruce, thanks for volunteering to be the first victim.
You're welcome. And then leave me alone for the rest of the. but
that's not how this works. That's not how it just works.
But actually, what would be interesting to me, if it could somehow, if this objective could be fulfilled by NEMA, is I would call it developing a sustainable infrastructure to actually progress with standards. And that's a big order to fill. I mean, to some extent, NEMA is already there in terms of, serving as a secretariat. And, of course, we have our own standards and the links that we have to other organizations, such as UL and so forth. I think all of that NEMA already does extremely well. But that question that we had earlier, in terms of, the main challenges, preventing standards adoption or development of standards. I wish I had actually, I'll take my answer back. I think I had initially said resources, was a big challenge. But to build on, I think this is my ROI day. The biggest challenge to standards is just that, ROI, and how it is not. It's almost a borderline impossible thing to qualify when it comes to company participation. What are we going to be getting for this? Now, in some scenarios, it's there. So for example, when you have a clear black and white kind of scenario, like earlier you mentioned the open protocols, open communication standards and those types of things, where, there are some member companies that absolutely have got a strategic, justification of wanting to influence standards like that, particularly if it's something that's in line with their particular product technology. Then you'll have other companies, and this kind of gets into the, really the question of the strategy. What is our strategy moving forward? Where they don't really care about who wins, as long as there's either a winner or not 24 winners, so that we don't have to develop 24 interfaces as opposed to 3 or 4 interfaces, because we really don't, we really don't have a vested interest, or a company may not have a vested interest in wanting to see one win over the other. And, I think back to the meeting that you participate or that you led with our Automation Business Committee and Government Affairs Committee about a week ago. Where one of our terrific members, made the statement when it came to strategy that sometimes you're involved in a standards committee because you want a standard to be moving forward, or you have it, but other times you belong to a standard committee because you want to make sure it doesn't move forward. And there is this inherent conflict that I think is always going to be there. And in the end, even though comments, I think quite often, We've had comments where executive management understands the importance, the people in the trenches who are doing the standards work understand the importance, but the problems with middle management. And I guess I would disagree with that in the sense that perhaps verbally, there's this endorsement from executive management, but in the end, middle management gets the strategy, the KPIs, and the budget, down one level to the next, to the next, to the next, and that's what's driving that decision of to what extent do we have people participating in standards, and how much time and how much people are we going to hire, or if you're not going to hire additional people, then what resources that we have are we going to take off of development projects so they can have a certain amount of time, dedicated to standards. It all comes down to, it's another big question of the big challenge with standards is really being able to show an ROI. And this is an area where I'm not so sure you can develop a tool, unlike what I was advocating a little earlier, with advanced manufacturing. But I think that's something holding us back. And I think what would be great is if, NEMA could somehow, build upon what they're already doing so that we have a more, maybe infrastructure is not quite the term, but a more viable model that will work with all of these inherent conflicts that all companies are constantly struggling with when it comes to standards participation.
Right. And I'll say, Bruce, what if I turned your standard strategy on its head, right? You talked about companies that participate because they want to see something move forward, or participate because they want to stop something. But what if we were to develop, a consensus-based standards roadmap? And so companies are participating because those standards are important for their bottom
Yeah,
line.
I
And
totally, yep.
it becomes more of a, let's let the US, the NEMA members, our stakeholders, our customers drive international standardization instead of sitting back and letting it happen to
Mhm.
us.
Mhm. No, I think there that roadmap or strategy is tied to that in really identifying who's got a vested interest in this and who doesn't, in making decisions based upon that, is important. But I also think too that we have these, like I brought this up in that meeting about a week ago with what we were dealing with one of our SCs and the associated TC, or was it an SC? I think it was an SC, with ANSI having requirements as far as more diverse participation. Who do you have in education? Who do you have in consulting? Who do you have in, end users versus producers and so forth? That I gotta believe that complication will continue, if not get worse. And that's what I mean by added to your roadmap strategy of how do you address that? Is there anything NEMA can bring to the table in terms of a framework or something where we can be viable on that level, and maybe bring it to another level.
Yeah, and I think, Bruce, that's why I was excited to hear from other associations. I mean, not that I don't think NEMA is the best, because I have to say that's where my paycheck comes from. But we can't do it all. We just, we don't have a million people on staff, and advanced manufacturing is a large issue that encompasses not just the folks that are making advanced manufacturing systems, but all kinds of manufacturing across the globe. And we don't have the membership in all kinds of manufacturing across the globe. So we're really going to have to partner with other organizations, I think, and do that strategically, but pick the right ones. And I think that the more that we can engage with folks that have a different stakeholder set than we do, the better we are at getting the input from those stakeholders that may not traditionally participate in NEMA activities, right?
Yep, exactly.
So thanks for that. And I agree. I mean, I think what I've heard over the past 2 days, and I've heard a lot, my notes are extensive and kind of crazy, but um, I've heard loudly and clearly that somebody needs to take the lead and start to put together a standardization roadmap for advanced manufacturing. And I think NEMA can definitely take the lead in starting that and then work with um, partner organizations to ensure that we've got the right stakeholders and industry sectors on board and agreeing to that, and then to start to put, boots on the ground and people at the table to make those things happen. And like I said, to really be driving standardization instead of letting it happen to us.
So Megan, this is Dean Bartles. If NEMA's going to take the point on doing that, I'm sure that the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, of course, they call themselves SME now, as well as AMT, the Association for Manufacturing Technology, would be very interested in participating in that. And I could hook you up with the right people if you're interested.
Absolutely. I'm always happy to expand my network to folks that either NEMA can help to achieve their goals or that can help NEMA to achieve ours. Because at the end of the day, especially in standardization, I think it takes us all rowing in the same direction to reach our final destination. And this an issue as big as advanced manufacturing is going to take a lot of oars to make that happen. And that was a terrible analogy, and I apologize for that. Okay, what else do folks?
So Megan, this is John Callan. So I'm an unapologetic technologist, and I've been listening quite enthralled with a lot of the conversations that have been going on here. One of the things that I think we've mentioned in the past is that I think we do, as we engage this activity, we do need to understand the overall landscape, what exists, what are the different pieces in play, where are the gaps. I think that's an important picture to put together to really understand where the opportunities clearly are, and what are some of the technologies that may exist that we may not be aware of that we can leverage. I also think the comments that was made earlier by Dean about involving some of the manufacturing organizations, associations that already exist is extremely important. And I would also suggest, that the folks at NIST would be very, very interested in this activity. I think they've got a group that focuses on this. And so to engage them is very, very important. There is one thing that I keep coming back to as an unapologetic technologist, and that is, what are the problems that we're trying to solve here? Okay, and how do we see standards facilitating solving those problems? And there's lots of different ways that we could solve these problems, and a proprietary approach or something ad hoc. What's the kicker that standardization brings to solving those problems? And I think we really do. I mean, we have the opportunity to boil the ocean here. Okay, I think we need to identify, what are some of the key problems that are affecting the industry? And again, is this specific to NEMA interests, or is it a much broader manufacturing 4.0 conversation? And again, what are the key problems that we're trying to address? And what additional boost does standardization bring to bear in solving those problems?
Yeah, and John, thanks for that question, because I think it brings us kind of back to the beginning of our day yesterday when we talked about NEMA's ITA MDCP award. And if we're just going to focus on that for a moment, I think we could, like you said, try to boil the ocean, but that's too much. But the award that we received is really focused on two things, right? Increasing U.S. exports to 4 key countries and increasing U.S. engagement in international standardization. And the reason for that is that, standards and trade are so closely linked and intertwined that if we want the U.S. industry to be competitive globally, we need to ensure that we are influencing the international standardization. And what we've seen, and I know that those involved in standards won't be surprised by the fact that I'm saying this because I've heard it my entire career, but it's been accelerating over the past couple of years. We've seen more and more and more retirements, and we see a lot more gray hair, even from folks like me who are still in their 20s, haha. But we don't see the replacement of those experts. And so what we'd like to try to do is rebuild that bench of expertise, so that we have folks we can send to these international standards meetings. And the way that we intend to do that is to try, at least for the couple of years of this award, to do some more extensive and meaningful training for those that may be interested in participating in international standards, and to give them guidance and mentorship on how to do that. And then to fund their travel, because we've heard over and over and over again, especially from young and emerging professionals, that their companies won't fund their travel. I know quite a few that have funded their own travel to these meetings, and in the hopes that if those folks are engaging in international standardization, their companies will catch up and really see the value of that engagement.
So you mentioned something very, very interesting. You mentioned the 4 target countries that we're supposedly focusing on. Turkey, Mexico, India was the 4th.
Indonesia.
Indonesia, gotcha. Yeah, how could I forget Java? But anyway, I mean, my perception, and I could be wrong, others could jump all over me for this. We don't have problems with trade with those countries because standards stacked against us in those territories. I mean, I could rattle off a handful of countries where that's not the case, where we do have standards that have been stacked up against American companies, and yet, we don't specifically call out those countries which seem to be, let's just call it aggressive relative to their standards activity. I mean, again, I mentioned before that I was involved with a ISO step working group that was involved in the characterization of production facilities. And it was an international working group, and the German contingent came in on the first meeting and dropped a 3-inch thick 3-ring binder on the table and said, there it is, it's done. And everybody in the working group kind of like looked at each other, looked at the Germans and said, excuse me, but we haven't even started yet. And yet you guys come in and give us a complete spec, a complete standard. How long have you guys had this? And they looked at each other and basically said, since the 40s. And people did the
German, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they did the quick math. And apparently during World War II, the Germans needed to figure out, as their factories were taken out by Allied bombing, how they could shift production. What a wonderful scenario to drive a standard, But here the Germans were. They had this thing all tied up in a bow, and they were willing to drop it on the international standards community, job done. That's the type of aggressiveness that we're facing in these international standards activities. And, bless American companies, but the reaction I've had with a lot of American companies is that, they're so proprietary in and of themselves to get them to get together and present a combined front on an international playing field is extremely challenging. Now, maybe NEMA can help facilitate that. Maybe NEMA can help bring, these companies that are really very, very interested in their best interests to realize that the industry interests also facilitate their best interests. But that's always been a challenge in the standards as well. And the United States just hasn't been as aggressive compared to some of these other countries that we've been up against in the past. And I hope that when we talk about international standards, we can be a little bit more conscientious about the players that we're engaging and the aggressiveness that they take, and the fact that we're stepping in to, in essence, counter their positioning as part of our strategy.
Yeah, so John, those are all great points and some great questions. And let me start out by addressing, I think, the first point you made, which is that we're not having issues with these 4 countries in terms of their aggressiveness and standardization. And I agree with that 100%. We targeted those 4 countries because we see opportunity there to increase U.S. exports to those countries. They're big manufacturing sectors, and they've been good trading partners for us. And so I think you have to decouple sort of increasing exports to those 4 countries and really facilitating business-to-business interactions there with the international standards participation part. They're, from my mind, almost 2 separate but equal goals of our program. And we're all, I think, exceedingly aware of countries that may be weaponizing, maybe that's too strong a word, but I'll use it anyway, weaponizing the international standards development process, and who have set standard strategies to really control it, or I don't know, whatever word you want to put in there. And I think developing our bench of experts, providing them with the information and the tools that they need to be the most influential they can be, developing a standard strategy so that the U.S. is leading in introducing concepts for standardization is going to help mitigate those issues with, countries like Germany coming in with a full standard and saying, oh, we did all the work, or China, putting forth folks for every secretariat or chairmanship and submitting more and more proposals for international standards that may or may not meet the international needs. So, I'm keenly aware that the U.S. needs to continue to focus on how we are the most influential at the IEC and ISO. And I know many of our members are aware, and the leaders in U.S. standardization at ANSI are aware as well. So I hope that helped answer some of your questions there.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. All right. So I'm going to go back to my notes. I have to go all the way up to see if I have any additional questions. Let me ask this question. NEMA talks a lot about cybersecurity, and I know that it's a focus of the Biden administration. I know Congress has been concerned about cybersecurity issues. And certainly as we start talking about advanced manufacturing, connecting manufacturing systems, using blockchain and digital twin, remoting in for maintenance and that kind of stuff, cybersecurity risks increase exponentially. How do we weave the right cybersecurity measures into implementation of advanced manufacturing to ensure that we're not putting the U.S. manufacturing infrastructure at risk?
So Megan, sorry, John again. I think one of the interesting views when we look at cybersecurity, I think we ultimately get back to securing proprietary information. And there are multiple, let's call them granularities of proprietary information. For example, as we start doing more and more and more digitalization of our product development systems, there's all that information that's accessible there. If you have a complete product data model of a product that you're producing and you ship that to an offshore manufacturing facility, how do you secure that asset? Some companies have actually gone to the extremes of not outsourcing, but actually setting up their own production facilities in regions to maintain that, at least the possibility of securing that data. Okay, but I do believe that ultimately this whole notion of cybersecurity is to facilitate the proprietary information that we handle on a day-to-day basis, and whether or not that's between manufacturing partners or within an organization, that information, the quote-unquote family jewels, need to be protected. And I think, again, what is the problem, and what technologies can we apply to that? Does blockchain play a role in that? Does 256-bit encryption come into play in that? But I think the conversation is this notion of securing proprietary information or proprietary assets, and then looking at the various ways that could be done. You're muted, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm talking to myself again. I see Tim has his hand up. Tim?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important to separate the data privacy issue, which I think John was primarily talking about, which is certainly a concern when you get into data privacy, data security, and the secret formulas and so on. And certainly that is a concern, especially as more and more data is cloud-based. However, I think a lot of the focus related to cybersecurity, especially from our industry, is from the control side, or the OT side. The data privacy concerns go across, the traditional IT side, and certainly there are aspects of that the IT industry and everybody is concerned about with your own individual data, certainly protection of the information that you have. It spills over into, as John mentioned, the other data formulas and so on. And then you get into the OT side. And on the OT side, it really is us moving more and more into a regulated environment. And I think the question for us is, how do we approach that regulated environment for the critical infrastructure items? And that seems to be the main focus that we're seeing from a regulatory standpoint. How do you protect the systems and the critical systems in situations like that? And as we move to this more and more regulated environment, the importance of international standardization just increases. Becomes more and more important that we have these harmonized standards and harmonized approaches. If we don't have that, we're already starting to see regulations that vary widely in their approach and in their demands. And, we have to be vigilant in looking at those regulations and looking at those approaches and ensuring that they reference the harmonized standards that we already have out there. You know, and for our industry, that brings us to the 62443 series of standards. And those really are a holistic approach at cybersecurity, from an individual component product up to a system level. And, you know, we have to continue to sell that approach, sell that risk-based approach to the regulators and those that are calling out different requirements for us in order to look at getting our products sold and accepted, not only by the regulators but also by our customers. And that last part is another one that's key, and it's an educational aspect, that educating our customers, again, in the use of these harmonized standards and the application of these harmonized standards for not only some of the system integrators but also the asset owners. And what do you have to do when you start looking at a risk-based approach to mitigating the hazards that can come from cybersecurity? And you know that is so important, that we look at it, and you have to recognize that every single installation is going to be different. And you know, you can have an approach based on certain systems, and you can have certain systems that are evaluated and looked at. But if you're opening those systems up at the asset owner or the end application, you know, you're going to create all kinds of problems. So there can be some harmonized approaches, but in the end, it has to come down to the use of and promotion of those harmonized standards that already exist.
Thanks for that, Tim. I think those are all great points, especially, you know, the need to really be advocating for the 62443 approach to cybersecurity, especially that risk-based approach to those that are considering cybersecurity regulations, to ensure that our companies can implement, you know, one solution across the globe, even if installations are different and different approaches or combinations of approaches are needed installation by installation. If we're able to use a standardized framework, I think it makes it easier for everybody. I see that Rudolph Dahl has his hand up. Rudolph? You're on mute if you're trying to talk.
There.
There you go.
And now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm one of those older guys you want to bring on board with the corporate memory. I go back to opening China originally, and I helped start foreign commercial service. I've had a black hat and a white hat with export. I was director of export controls, and also with the East-West trade. So I've been both controlling this stuff. Now, when we are talking about international standards, you have to take into consideration the Export Administration regulations and the international traffic in arms, because some of the things that we're focusing on may show what we're interested in from controlling point of view. So that has to be taken into consideration when you're doing these things. The other thing is we're talking about generalized standards. Individual countries, particularly the second tier countries, not the ones you're focusing on like India and all that, don't have, particularly in the advanced technologies, they don't have the regulations internally. And you may have to set those up for them. Now, some companies that I work with have said, well, there's no regulation, so we can do whatever we want. And I said, no, that's liability. If you set up regulations and then you meet those regulations, then you don't wind up with like Nestle almost bankrupting their company when they didn't meet standards. So those are two issues. You should be looking at individual countries. The other thing is exporting your technology. A lot of these countries, and we're working in Africa and South America, that kind of region, you can make a lot of sales that aren't necessarily the top tier stuff. You want to bring them into technology. I was interested with Stefan this morning talking about the trade fair, Chicago, and I remember in the past the Hungarians, or the Czechs came in and they wanted to buy our 3-axis technology, and we refused to sell it to them. Well, the next time Chicago opened up, they came in with their own technology and at 3-axis, and were underselling us. So we could have coordinated with them, and still we were at 5-axis at that point. And don't ask me to explain to people how you get the extra 2-axis into it. But that's a way to market stuff without necessarily releasing our top end technology. So anyway, those are my comments.
Thanks for those, Rudolph. I think those are great comments. And certainly as we focus on experts, we want to make sure that we're leaning on the experts to help us to understand what the rules and regulations are. I'm going to change course completely, and I'm going to ask a question that may not be exceedingly relevant to our ITA MDCP award or to standardization, but it's definitely something I think is weighing on the minds across industry and our stakeholders. And that is, what kind of environmental and social governance issues impact advanced manufacturing, whether it's because advanced manufacturing helps to mitigate some environmental concerns like increasing energy efficiency, or whether it's a social governance issue like there's not sufficient diversity in advanced manufacturing industry.
I hate to sound dumb, but could you just rephrase that question again? I'm not quite sure I followed it.
Yeah, so I think as we've seen over the past couple of years, environmental and social governance issues are increasingly important to governments and companies and our customers. And those issues are everything from things that impact climate, like energy efficiency, materials management, recycling, et cetera, to more of the social governance issues like diversity, gender equality, racial equality, et cetera. And I just wanted to hear from, folks on the call about, what do you think all of that does to impact advanced manufacturing, or what does advanced manufacturing do to impact or mitigate some of those issues? So yes, is that helpful?
Yeah. So I guess the first half is clearer to me as far as how advanced manufacturing would impact, let's say global positive objectives such as reducing carbon, energy efficiency, 2 degrees C, that kind of thing, cleaner manufacturing, or not having things that are going to be polluting the environment, things like that. I can see that. I guess I'm struggling with how other issues like diversity and gender equality would well, I suppose I go, okay, I guess I'm following you, but although I can't help myself to think that perhaps, as potentially a negative impact as a positive impact, like just, it's gotten to be such a hot topic over the past few years about the fact that, the fear factor, that if you have advanced manufacturing, kind of the old someday robots are going to replace people, and how are you going to take care of these people? And everything from the proposals we saw in the last election, where we're probably looking at, or some politicians predicting a day when government would be paying people because it wouldn't be possible for them to get work, and just the terrible impact it would have on jobs and so forth. So yeah, if that's what you meant by that, then yeah, I think that's a potential concern, and that's why earlier, like when I was asking for the equivalent of a standard tool, backed by a third-party organization, and I had tried to pre-qualify the fact that one advantage is what it's doing with your labor resources, but that it shouldn't be looked at in the mode of, hey, if you go advanced manufacturing, you can lay off 50 people. That carries with it another host of issues. But I was sincere when I say that the positive element of that is that you're not getting rid of resources, but you have the ability to redeploy those human resources in a better, more viable way, and perhaps control the growth of the dependence that you're going to have on labor, and the extent to which that also affects the supply chain. Like if there's one thing that I think a lot of our companies have learned the hard way, or I know at least we did, boy, it would have been nice to have had COVID-proof manufacturing over the past couple of years. I mean, it was a huge wake-up call to see, the workforce and the percentage of the workforce that was at higher risk, due to those, those high-risk elements, pre-existing conditions and so forth, and just how unfairly they were impacted from a health point of view, but also the practical impact that it had on manufacturing as well, where there were folks that couldn't risk coming into work, quite frankly, and working in that type of environment. And there's not a lot of stuff you can do remote when it comes to the hands-on manufacturing and logistics of products. So but I think it is, at first I didn't understand it, but I think it should be a part of the narrative, recognizing the negative element of it, but also really trying to scratch the surface as far as the potential positive element of it with health. What it can potentially do, for people where there's well, let's say if you take advanced manufacturing to its extreme, the degree you're able to monitor and control systems and so forth, and to do it remotely, that may be a better enabler as well in the future for the workforce. And of course, the obvious is, the opportunity for higher paying jobs. It may not be in a mass labor type of way, but here you're talking about needing a highly trained technical workforce, that theoretically is going to result in higher paying jobs as well. But yeah, I think you're right. I think if both are included in that argument or that advocation for advanced manufacturing, then I think it can help promote it.
Great. Thanks for that. Rudolph, do you still have your hand up from before? Or do you have a new point to bring to the table? You're still on mute if you're speaking. All right. Well, then
and I don't have a cat to play. We're doing a project in South Africa right now, and it's we have a tourism situation there and agriculture. All of those are people-intensive things, but they can't do a thing with have a power and a water shortage and COVID-19. they're getting hit in 3 places. So we're focusing on those issues. And while our power generation doesn't employ very many people, but because we're providing those other issues, we then we're talking thousands of people, tourist related, agriculture intensive, and those things. So it's the secondary thing. The other thing is if we're doing green tech, for instance, the Export-Import Bank, where in a large project they might go to 10, 12 years. If it's we can show an environmental impact, they'll go to 18 years on the financing. So there's a two hit thing that we can do there.
Great, thanks, Rudolph. And John, I'm going to let you have the last word before we move on to our next session.
So this may be a contentious view, but my experience is that the problem in manufacturing is not DEI related at all. What the problem is that we have spent the past 10, 20 years deconstructing manufacturing as a viable career, period. And, I've been to manufacturing facilities where there are women of color, men of color, complete diversity in the factory. It's the job opportunity. The problem is that we had a industry where the rallying cry was, do you want your kids putting tires on Toyotas? And that was the view of manufacturing. And even as recent as yesterday, people were referring to manufacturing facilities as those dark, dirty environments.
Dank, right?
Yeah, which seems to me indicate that a lot of folks haven't actually been in a manufacturing facility. I mean, I would actually equate a lot of the manufacturing facilities that I've been into right up there with the cleanliness level of the Hershey chocolate factories. Unbelievably clean, pristine, and they're extremely efficient about recycling their scraps, their coolant, fluids, everything. And so we as an organization, or even as a country, need to make manufacturing a viable career option today, whether that's through apprentice programs that have been gone for 20 years. I mean, Caterpillar was the last company that actually offered an active apprentice program in the country. We need to go back into high schools and educate people on the viability of a career path that may not necessarily require, chalking up an expensive college education. That trade schools and apprentice programs, can lead to a very fulfilling and satisfying life. But we got a fundamental problem there that has absolutely nothing to do with DEI. Okay, and until we recognize that we need to turn the bus around relative to how we see manufacturing as a career option, this other stuff is all going to be lagging way in the background.
Yeah, and John, I think we could talk about that for probably 3 days. I certainly have talked about it a lot in my career. But I do think you're right that advanced manufacturing in general is a very diverse environment in terms of, race and gender. And I think that advanced manufacturing offers us even more opportunity to become even more diverse and to turn that stereotype of the dark and dank factory on its head. And I apologize, but we're going to have to cut this conversation short just to keep to our time frame. And I'm going to introduce my colleague, Patrick Hughes, again to the crowd. He's going to give us a few minutes of wrap up and an overview of the NEMA Advanced Manufacturing Council. So welcome, Patrick, and take it away.
Thank you, Megan. And hello again, everybody. I'm grateful to be able to capstone each end of this dialogue. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for hopping on the summit and spending 2 days with us. We're very excited about the opportunity that we've been granted from the International Trade Administration to increase our work on advanced manufacturing, specifically on international standards development. And we're very much looking forward to our continued partnership with ITA over the coming months and years over the course of this grant. So for those who are only able to catch part of the meeting, I want to spend a few minutes just recapping some of the highlights and letting you know how you can stay involved after this summit. I want to also note that the summit was recorded and will be made available on demand after the summit wraps. So today, this morning, we heard the legislative perspective from Nancy Martinez with the Office of Senator Todd Young of Indiana. Senator Young has been an instrumental supporter of trade provisions that are going to benefit NEMA members. And he's a good champion for our interests in the Senate there. Ms. Martinez she also talked about support that Congress is considering for workforce development initiatives and the importance of those bills to keeping U.S. industry competitive, especially in the global market. Later in the agenda today, we also heard from some of our colleagues at associations and from you all during this discussion period at the tail end of the summit here, including a lot of discussion about the importance of developing a standards roadmap. I think that came through pretty clearly. Industry experts in our Advanced Manufacturing Association panel also highlighted the need to consider the complete standards ecosystem and minimize the complexity and cost so that we're keeping standards accessible, especially for small and medium enterprises that make up the majority of our global supply chain. Yesterday, the discussion focused primarily on providing information about the services that the International Trade Administration offers to you all, U.S. manufacturers, as you try to access global markets. And we also dug into the specifics of the award that NEMA received through ITA's Market Development Cooperator Program, the MDCP acronym that you've heard so often over the course of the last couple of days. I want to mention that one of the main efforts related to this ITA MDCP award is to increase engagement in international standardization, specifically for advanced manufacturing. That's really at the core of what ITA is funding NEMA to do. Part of that award is earmarked to fund travel for you all, for technical experts, to get engaged in international standards development meetings. We also have a goal of, not just funding participation from existing experts, but getting new people involved in standards development and helping to develop a new generation of standards experts. So in the coming weeks and months, we will be identifying those international groups, such as the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, that are a priority for us to engage in. And we'll be circulating information for how you can request funding to participate in those groups. We also understand that, we don't do standards for the sake of standardization. That's not helpful. There needs to be some larger, strategy or business purpose. And that's why NEMA's launching our Advanced Manufacturing Council. This is going to create a forum for NEMA members and invited non-members to collaborate on these issues, coordinate NEMA's response, and help NEMA set priorities and achieve our mutual industry goals and objectives for advanced manufacturing systems. This Advanced Manufacturing Council is going to bring together both the business and strategy focused roles within your companies, as well as those with a technical perspective, to ensure that NEMA and industry resources are being invested in ways that will make the most impact. We want to make sure that we turn this council into a forum which will hear from technical experts to understand the areas of highest priority, Also use it as a forum so that industry can agree on the biggest challenges and barriers to US and global adoption of advanced manufacturing systems, and ultimately work together to create more demand for your products and systems and to increase exports, especially in the target markets that we've identified in the grant of India, Turkey, Indonesia, and Mexico. I should note that membership in the Advanced Manufacturing Council is open. I'd encourage you to reach out to Fern Abrams. She's one of the newest members of the NEMA team. She is our industry director for industrial systems. Her email is fern.abrams@nema.org. I believe she can maybe drop that in the chat so you all have it available. So please reach out to her if you have any questions about the council, or you can raise them now. I'm happy to answer a question or two if there are any. Okay. Well,
I have a
Rudy,
quick question. Are
yeah,
you charging NEMA members to participate in the council?
no, NEMA members, your membership will be paid through the ITA award.
Okay.
So there's no additional fee to participate in this group.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mhm. Any other questions? I see, Rudolph, you have your hand up, but that might be a legacy from earlier discussion. Okay. As I said, Fern Abrams is your best point of contact for the council. So to continue to stay engaged and continue the conversation that we've started over the last couple of days, please reach out to her to sign up. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce another new-ish member of the NEMA team, our president and CEO, Deborah Phillips, to make some closing remarks. She joined us last fall in September, coming to us from the American Petroleum Institute. She also has standards development and trade association experience at the American Chemistry Council before that. So she has hit the ground running at NEMA and is well-versed in the standards side of what we do. So Deborah, I'll turn it over to you to make some closing remarks.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it. And hello, good afternoon, everyone. I promise to be quick. I don't want to belabor, I think, the many points that Patrick just summarized. I know you've had a fruitful couple of days of conversation and learning already. I just wanted a chance to say hello and to thank all of those of you that played an integral role in the proceedings, whether that's through speaking, being a panelist, or just participating actively in the conversation. The partnership that NEMA has undertaken with the Department of Commerce here on advanced manufacturing is a really important one, and it's a topic that's also sort of near and dear to me. There's been so much change in the manufacturing environment over the last couple of decades, and it's exciting to see and think about what lies ahead. I started my career in manufacturing, actually, in the pulp and paper industry, and then in the chemical industry, and just thinking back about what it was like in the paper mill and the chemical manufacturing facility versus what is happening in facilities today. It's really quite remarkable. And I saw a lot of that up close and personal when I was with the American Petroleum Institute in oil and gas, the use of drone technology, the use of remote sensing technology. And then, here in the electrical space, the idea of digital twinning and it is just, bringing sort of the high tech into the manufacturing environment. And the most exciting thing about all of it is the outcomes that result from all of that. It makes for safer, more efficient, more sustainable, less emitting facilities in manufacturing. So, it's just such a, such a bright future ahead, and I think really meaningful that NEMA and all of you can play a role here. As you know, under the cooperator program that NEMA is taking part in, what we're trying to do here is really understand the challenges and opportunities in 4 distinct markets: India, Indonesia, Mexico, and Turkey. And there's potentially a $20 billion market opportunity for advanced manufacturing there if we can kind of figure out how to best address those challenges and opportunities. And of course, the second part of what we want to achieve here is growing domestic participation in advanced manufacturing standards that are being developed for the global community. And it sounds like that was underscored yesterday by Assistant Secretary Driscoll. And I heard Patrick just mention this a moment ago, but wanted to emphasize that I think what's come through loud and clear to us over the course of the last couple of days is the need to develop an advanced manufacturing standards roadmap, something that kind of gives us a vision of what that future looks like. And so that will be on our short list of near-term things to do. So, I as you can tell, I'm enthusiastic about this program and NEMA's participation, and really encourage all of you to participate actively, as Patrick just said. The opportunity is there. There's no charge, and I think it's meaningful work that hopefully will not only result in those beneficial outcomes that I mentioned, but also result in business opportunities for your company. And we look forward to facilitating that. So once again, many thanks to all of you who've actively participated, our panelists, our speakers, and I'm really happy to have the ability to pile on here on what I know was a good couple of days of proceedings, and wish you all well in your endeavors in this regard moving forward. So happy to close us out. And Patrick, Megan, do you have any other closing comments before I call it for the proceedings?
Yep, thanks, Deborah. I just wanted to offer the opportunity for anybody on this call to ask any questions of you or other NEMA staff while we still have a few minutes left before our 2 o'clock adjournment. Otherwise, we're going to give you all back this time in your day. All right, it looks like we've got crickets on the line, so I'll just echo the gratitude from Deborah and Patrick for everybody that participated, either as panelists or speakers, but certainly for those that participated in all of the discussion. It was very helpful for us as NEMA staff to sort of goal set and start to really kick off this award program. And we're going to adjourn this 2-day summit with our sincere gratitude. And please stay tuned for more information from NEMA staff on the Advanced Manufacturing Council, on opportunities to be funded for international travel for standards development, and certainly on the development of that advanced manufacturing standards roadmap.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Megan.
Bye, all.
Thank you, Megan, for your work today and yesterday.
Exactly. Thank you, team. Have a good